Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Torin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular ladder battle, I will be playing the Greenskins, and I'm going to be facing off against an Empire opponent. So definitely a very, very fun matchup. And it gives me an excuse to use a lot of goblins, because I think they are just an absolutely amazing fodder unit against the Empire. But regardless, let's do a quick rundown of my army composition before the action gets underway. But regardless, he's going to be shooting at me with the steam tank while I give you guys a rundown. So in my front line, I have goblins. They're shielded, which is very, very good against the Empire. Again, Empire usually does bring a lot of missile infantry. And right here, you guys can already see he has 3 groups of crossbowmen. So these guys have essentially already paid their dues. They're going to be very good at absorbing that fire and also make a very, very good fodder target for greatswords and all types of things like that. There's so many of them, and they can really tie up a lot of the models of those elite Empire infantry or pretty much any faction for that matter. So I have those guys. In the secondary line here, I have Black Orcs. These are my shock troops. So once these goblins absorb the shock, the Black Orcs will follow up and get all the buffs from this this Great Shaman, or excuse me, this Orc Shaman back here. So Fists of Gork, Ere We Go, all of that stuff, and they'll be nice and clustered here. This melee force. So those buffs are going to hit a lot of guys and are going to pay huge dividends. And when you stack that up with the Wa, which gives the 58 melee attack, your troops are hitting like absolute trucks. So definitely a fan of that synergy there. Right here, I have this Arachnarok Spider, who is already taking missile fire from that steam tank, which is a very wise choice on my opponent's part. But regardless, this is a great, great unit. I love the fact that it applies poison with both its melee and its missile attacks. So definitely getting a lot of value out of that. And personally, I like the Arachnarok Spider a lot more than the Giant, but that's just my 2 cents. It has armor piercing, poison attacks, and it's very, very sturdy with 150 armor and an extremely high HP pool. So definitely a cool unit. Here against Empire, a lot of times Empire will bring Outriders or other harass units or different types of cavalry, and I feel like the Goblin big bosses are just the answer to that. They have 94 speed, which is so fast. If you look here, 94, and my opponent, let's take a look over here at these Demogryph Knights. They have 76. Not that he's gonna beat a group of Demogryph Knights by himself on this little wolf, but regardless, that's huge, and he can, at least tie them up, and he has 2 potions as well. So he can really, really just hang against elite troops. I could send this guy against a group of greatswords and he could fight them all day. So definitely good value there. And I also brought another one just in case. So then I have the Orc Warboss with the 2 potions, the Orc Shaman. Usually I just bring the magic missile ability, the Fists of Gork, as well as Ere We Go. The other abilities I'm not a huge fan of, although the Foot, the Stomp, it's a lot of fun. So I do bring a group of Night Goblin Archers. I like these guys a lot. You can kind of work them into optimal flank positions. And once the main force engages, you can then have them start firing. And usually, out of sight, out of mind. A lot of times your opponents won't register it with your initial army. So they won't plan their initial movements, or to account for them. So big fan of those guys. Over here in Vanguard deployment, I have 2 groups of Goblin Wolf Guarders. These units are just absolutely devastating against Empire. Even if you come in and, are only able to get some missile troops in the back and your opponent does a good job at, fending them off, they have such high run speed that the opponent's cavalry won't be able to catch them. And also you can just kill routing units. So as like groups of cheap infantry like spearmen and crossbowmen route off the battlefield, you can just use the Goblin Wolf Riders to clean them up. And that alone justifies their value in my opinion. So just my 2 cents there. So my opponent has a group of Demogryph Knights here. So just standard Demogryph Knights, armor piercing, anti-infantry. The anti-large is decent against the Greenskins, but regardless, these guys are going to be just fine. They're going to do good against most of my troops, and if you can get decent engagement on the Black Orcs with these guys, or some of my other high-value targets, it'll definitely pay off for him. In his main line, he has great swords and spearmen with shields, which is good because I do bring missile infantry. Looks like he has 3 groups of crossbowmen. He has a General of the Empire with the potions. And to be honest, in just the competitive metagame, you kind of have to bring the General of the Empire or the Orc Warboss. Kind of bums me out because I really like bringing Karl Franz. I really like bringing Grimgor or Azag or all those guys. But to be honest, if this Empire player decided to get a bunch of flying units, he could just cheese out any of those lords I just mentioned. So it's really disappointing. But hopefully they'll maybe just limit the potions to 1 per lord. I don't know what the fix is, guys, but, again, I would just like to see those Karl Franz type units make a return. So he does have a light wizard here with Nets of Amnatok as well as most of the abilities. So he's definitely going to have some flexibility there to nets me down and, shoot me with his missile attacks. And then, of course, he has the steam tank. So that's a quick rundown of his army. And also, I forgot to mention, I have Doom Diver Catapults. They're so good against the Empire. You can see they're already just doing devastating damage to this front line here. So regardless, the troops are, engaging and as planned, and it looks like he's going to net me down here, which is definitely a good play. Very, very irritating because you can see now these goblins are the only ones running forward. So I immediately kind of, I think I halt these guys in a moment. I can't recall what I do here, but again, I'm taking that missile fire and I'm tied down, and it's definitely tough. But these goblins, he should be targeting the black orcs, but these goblins are just taking that missile fire, and they're completely content. And you guys can see there, I reformed my ranks because I want them to engage together. If I just engaged these guys, they would have gotten enveloped and just destroyed by that general. So he nets me down again, and is just taking advantage of that. But regardless, my opponent's taking huge damage from this missile fire, from these Doomdiver catapults. You can see they're flying in there and doing some serious damage, so no complaints there. In the back line, my opponent did pull these Demogryph Knights to try and get my Doomdiver catapults, which is very good because they're doing huge damage to his ranks. But I did keep some goblins back here to tie them up, and then my 2 big bosses. And those guys alone, you know, he will get these eventually because Demogryph Knights are elite and they can just kind of run through things. But these goblin big bosses and these goblins are going to be able to deal with those guys no problem. So I was feeling quite comfortable. So right here, I do use, I believe, Ere We Go on my front line. The black orcs have engaged. He does get a nice surround of my Arachnarok Spider with spearmen who have anti-large, as well as the greatswords who have that armor piercing. So this spider, he definitely did a very good job, and he's focusing it with some of his missile attacks as well. But I do bring the black orcs with Fist of Gork, and the spider does get away, though it's broken. So they're going to cut through these troops quite well. In the front line, you can see the goblins are absorbing most of the shock, and these guys just cannot handle that fodder plus the black orcs shock. And Ere We Go and the Wah and like all this stuff going on, and you can see the Orc Warboss over here on his majestic pig is laying the beat down. Poor Empire guy, they're definitely having a bad day. And now the Night Goblins, they've come out of hiding, and they're going to start shooting at these opponents' missile troops. But unfortunately for him, you know, they're going to just, you know, get destroyed by those, I mean, excuse me, they did get destroyed by those Doomdivers, so they're so low. And my Goblin Wolf Riders, sorry I didn't get a good angle to show you guys, but they've just been cycle charging these guys back here. And my opponent's so tied up in the front line, and he committed his cavalry back here, so he has no defense here, really. And although it looks like the Steam Tank's taking some shots, you can see the Goblin Wolf Riders are just so good at chasing down these Empire troops here and are doing a very, very good job at riding them down. That's so much value because the crossbowmen cost, what, twice as much as Goblin Wolf Riders? And I have the Vanguard deployment. It's just so much pressure on your opponent. In conjunction with the Doomdiver catapults, he basically has no range support now, just completely out of the game, except for this annoying Steam Tank over here. But regardless, the Spider did come back, and now the Black Orcs are engaged, and the Spider's morale has kind of stabilized in the 30s, so it's still steady. And this is very, very bad for my opponent. My melee troops with the Spider, he's applying poison, and with the Fist of Gork, his guys are just getting punished over here. And this Shaman is very, very happy, and he's also buffing this line here with Ere We Go, and you can see that most of the Empire battle lines are crumbled or getting crumbled right now. Those goblins, you can see the greatswords are mostly fighting the goblins here, and these black orcs are kind of mixed in, which is just so ideal. But oh, I did not see that Steam Tank coming, just running through my troops. Man, that was very, very cool. And his Steam Tank still is in pretty good health. And if you look at the breakdown of what, you know, the troop count is, I have 500, looks like 20 versus 295. Granted, most of mine are goblins, so it's not a complete blowout. And the Steam Tank is still in here, you know, causing me some issues. And he does have some crossbowmen, it looks like, but my Goblin Wolf Riders will probably get to them eventually. And another thing these guys are great for, these big bosses, is they're really good for hunting down enemy wizards. You know, you can see that this light wizard is not going to get away. That little wolf is going to catch him, and they're definitely going to punish that guy and make sure he doesn't come back. So Goblin Wolf Riders are very good at dealing with those annoying light wizards, as long as they're on the ground. So right here in the front, you can see my opponent. I think he just has this Steam Tank here. I'm not sure where his Lord is. I know he has the light wizard, and I think his General of the Empire was diving back there or something. I don't recall, but he's somewhere in the mix. We'll find him here in a moment. There he is. He's right there in the front line fighting. So regardless, my Black Orcs and my Shaman are doing pretty well here. And this Orc Warboss, you can see this General of the Empire is not going to have a good day. He's heavily outnumbered by some very sturdy troops. And, you know, despite the fighting against greatswords and General of the Empire, these Black Orcs are still in very, very good health. I can't complain. And those Goblins, you can see they're finally coming back from rout, but they did a very good job absorbing that crossbow fire and giving my Wolf Riders time to get in position. And thankfully for me, this Arachnarok Spider is able to engage on the Steam Tank, which is good, but, you know, and these Black Orcs are chasing down his routing units here. The Steam Tanks are, you know, when I first started playing this game, I used to get very big and heavy armies and, you know, very slow, and I didn't bring goblins or big bosses. And I've played so many games against Empire where, you know, they would come with several Steam Tanks and just kite me around for, like, the entire duration of the battle until it was either a draw or I just, you know, had all my units taken out through attrition. But these big bosses, they're so good against Steam Tanks. They'll chase it down, apply constant pressure, and they are able to, you can see I just used the potion of toughness there. So, you know, this steam tank is not going to get those goblins down, and he is going to have a bad time. So at this point, my opponent doesn't really have much left. You can see most of his troops are routing, and the only reason the game isn't over is because this steam tank is unbreakable. So let's go ahead and just fast forward. Well, that thing gets taken out there, but it was definitely a good game. A lot of fun with those goblins. The big bosses you guys saw, they were just putting in some serious work. They dealt with the Demogryph Knights and just all kinds of value. So let's see the breakdown here. So they didn't get a lot of kills, but that's because they were chasing Demogryph Knights. And they were also just chasing this Light Wizard down, who definitely met his end. But regardless, the Light Wizard was still able to generate quite a bit of value with those nets. And you guys saw I was tied down, taking missile fire and steam tank fire and all that. So Black Orcs, they just did great work. You can see with the Fists of Gork and Ere We Go, they just cut through these great swords. Well, that group of great swords did very well, though most of its kills were on goblins, to be fair. True MVPs, though, are these wolf riders, and as well as these big bosses. These guys just got through, put in some serious work, and just took out his crossbow line. And of course, the big bosses were able to pressure the steam tank, which was very helpful because I didn't want to get kited around for 20 minutes by it, which, you know, when I used to play with Grimgor would happen quite a bit. So definitely not fun. The Doom Divers did pretty well for themselves. They definitely softened up the crossbowmen, but of course my opponent did a very good job with the Demogryph Knights getting back there. But you know, again, they did fall to that, which definitely, you know, cut him out in regards to mobility. So good game to my opponent. Good game to Captain Babel here. It was a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and thanks for watching, guys. More content coming soon. Stay tuned, and I definitely cannot wait for that DLC. I'll be jumping right into the multiplayer, trying out all the new stuff, and going from there. Thanks again, guys, and have an excellent night.